Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans.
T20 is back for its 10th anniversary, and as usual, the best cricketers in the Caribbean will be in Antigua to take part in the region's premier local white ball competition. The action will take place from April 13th to 29th at the Sir Vivian Richards Cricket Stadium. The Jennings Tigers, Bethesda Golden Eagles, Boland's Blasters, Empire Nation, New Winthrop's Lions, All Saints Pythons, and Pigot's Crushers will try their best to dethrone the Liberta Blackhawks. The cool and smooth T20 is back, and it's bigger and better than ever. You can't afford to miss a single ball.
Indeed it is, people. Make sure you lock in for the cool and smooth T20. It begins in, well, at the time of recording, it begins in 2 days' time. On Thursday, the 13th of April. Go to all of our socials, www.caribbeancricketpodcast.com, on Twitter or Instagram, @CaribCricket. And, Twitter and Instagram, I should say. And you can find out all of the details that we've been posting about the Cool and Smooth T20. Get involved for this year. Lots and lots of big announcements have taken place since I last spoke about it. Scotland are, of course, in Antigua doing their prep work, playing against Leeward Island Hurricanes, playing against the St. Kitts and Nevis Patriots. The St. Kitts and Nevis Patriots themselves have been carrying out scouting, a kind of scouting and development camp, as well as playing those games against Scotland themselves. Scotland seem to be having a great time of it. St. Kitts and Nevis Patriots seem to be having a great time of it. And of course, the competition itself begins on Thursday. Cricket District are involved, or they're certainly hinting that they're involved in it. If you go on their socials, it looks like they'll be going out there as well. Melinda Farrell is out there. Listen, it's not just the IPL, people. Get involved with the cool and smooth T20. I can't give it any greater plug than that. My name is Machel St. Patrick here at one half of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, and I have a cold. People. And I also haven't recorded something in a long while because I've not been in the country. I've just come back from Sweden yesterday. I was out of the country for 3 or 4 days or something like that. So apologies if anyone's been wondering, where's the content? What's been going on with the Caribbean Cricket Podcast? How come you haven't recorded anything? Don't worry, people. If you listen to the audios, you'll see that there will be some new pods drop in on that particular platform. So go search Caribbean Cricket Podcast, or whatever particular audio platform you listen to our podcast, and look out for some regular content coming back on the YouTube channel. Now I'm back in my room and back in London. So people, let's get into it. I'm worried because of this cold. I feel like I'm going to sneeze at some point in this particular recording. So if I do, I'm just going to press mute and then do one big ginormous sneeze. You'll be able to watch it, but you won't be able to hear it. So, people, I wanted to look at something that should be announced in West Indies cricket within the next, I expect this within a week, okay? And because of the IPL, I think a lot of unless you're in England, of course, because in England, the county championship has started, but unless you're in one of the major cricket nations where cricket may or may not be going on, if you're in the Caribbean and you're kind of like one of those IPL dons and you care about what's going on in IPL, then you've probably forgotten that some major news is due with regards to West Indies cricket. And that is, of course, in relation to who is going to be the new head coach of the West Indies red ball team and white ball team. The deadline to send in CVs and cover letters and all of that from Cricket West Indies was the 31st of March, 2023. Okay, so that's approximately 11 days ago. That was the deadline. If Cricket West Indies have applied what I call usual recruitment structures with regards to sorting out CVs, conducting interviews, etc., by my reckoning, and I haven't had this confirmed, so I've not reached out to Johnny Grave or Jimmy Adams or Dr. Shallow, etc., to find out how long the process is going to take. But by my reckoning, we should already be at the stage of either one of two things. Either one, identifying who's gone through to the final interview stage, or we're already at the final interview stage and they've already commenced. The point being that I expect a brand new West Indies red ball and white ball head coach to be in place by, at the earliest, the end of next week, at the very latest, the end of the following week after that. So what would be the 28th of April? So essentially, I expect a head coach to be in position before the end of this month, and I actually think it could be as early as next week. But of course, they'll want to do press conferences. They'll want to get their PR game on point, and this is Cricket West Indies I'm talking about. They'll want to ensure that statements are written and worded appropriately, and so on and so forth. So I think it could be in the final week of April that we hear who's got the two gigs. Now, of course, it's also worth reminding people that whoever gets the white ball gig, because they've decided to split the roles. So we are assuming we're getting a separate red ball coach and a separate two different coaches, one for red ball, one for white ball. That's clearly the assumption based on the two job adverts that have gone out. Now, whoever gets a white ball job, they immediately have a serious job on their hands, because all they will have is May. Let's assume it's somebody from overseas. Let's assume it's not anybody in the Caribbean, although I'll get to that in a second. Assuming it's somebody from overseas, they will only have May in which to, one, acclimatize themselves to the Caribbean, acclimatize themselves to the structures of how cricket works in the Caribbean, and then within that month, they then would meet our ODI squad, more than likely at the end of May, start of June. Remember, a lot of our ODI players, or what will be in the ODI squad for those World Cup qualifiers in Zimbabwe, are in the IPL. Nicholas Pooran, Jason Holdale, Zari Joseph, Carl Mayers. Who am I missing? Who else is in the IPL? Rovman Powell. That's already 5 players straight off the top of my head. Romario Shepherd, Aldine Smith. That's 7 players. Did Shepherd get an IPL deal? I think he did. So that's already 7 players who we would expect to be in a World Cup qualifying squad to go to Zimbabwe. So whoever gets this new gig for the white ball coach, they're in a bit of a dilemma, because there is no appropriate camp that they can run prior to the end of the IPL, because half of the squad that is likely to be named to go to Zimbabwe are in the IPL. So what does a new head coach do? Do they try and run a camp in the Caribbean with just the remaining ODI players, and you call up some kind of backup players who would be the ones to get picked if there were injuries, and you run a pre-World Cup qualifying camp? That's what I would do. I'd think outside the box. I'd pick the next 7 names who I consider to be part of a wider white ball setup and say, you man come through, we're running a camp. I'm looking for top performances in this camp, and should any injuries take place, you're next off the rank. That's what I think is a sensible thing to do. It's worth reminding people as well that for the red ball coach, there is actually a priority to think about. On the 18th of April to the 6th of May, we are going to have the Headley Week series. Now, again, I don't know when the red ball coach is going to be announced. You would think that Cricket West Indies would want this person in position prior to the Headley Week series starting. But for that to be the case, that person would have to be announced and appointed by the end of this week to be in position to go to Antigua and watch Team Headley, Team Weeks, and the West Indies Academy in action and get their first kind of taste for the red ball talent. And remember, there is a planned Academy tour, not been announced yet, and a planned West Indies A-team tour, not been announced yet. So actually, time is of the essence, both for the red ball coach and for the white ball coach. And as much as I started the video saying, boy, the white ball coach best be in place before the end of this month, if Cricket West Indies are thinking clearly, technically, the red ball coach should be in position even before the white ball coach, given some of the red ball cricket that's coming up in the near future. As usual, and then, as always, people, obviously get in the comments below on YouTube. If you disagree, agree, you've got anything to say on any of these comments I'm making, get in the comments below at us at Twitter and Instagram, and let me know what you think about those points. And then It's a quick video. We're 10 minutes in. I want this wrapped up before 22 minutes max. And then I started thinking about, so who's going to be the head coach? Now, if you've tuned into this video to kind of listen for who is Machel going to say should be the next West Indies white ball and red ball coach, do you know what? I've got no horse in this race. But I will just put this dilemma to people to find out what you lot think about this. And check this out. I'm going to make a football analogy. When Jose Mourinho was sacked by Manchester United in December 2018, Manchester United appointed former former Manchester United kind of great and hero Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and they appointed him as an interim manager to guide them to the end of the season, so that they could give themselves time to try and work out who should be their next manager. In that time, Solskjaer won 14 out of the first 19 games he managed as United's manager. And after that 19th game, Manchester United made the decision to offer him a 3-year contract based on how well he had done as an interim manager. Now, for those of you who are Manchester United fans, you can now go on to say whether that was a wise thing to do or whether Manchester United jumped the gun based on the fact that Solskjaer basically had nothing to lose. He was an interim manager. Anything that he did that was good would be seen as a bonus. And if he sucked, it didn't matter because he was an interim manager, right? Should Manchester United have given Ole Gunnar Solskjaer the job based on the fact they won 14 out of his first 19 matches, or should they have trusted the process and followed through on what they originally said they were going to do, which was carry out a kind of exhaustive look at who are the best candidates to get the job and moving forward with a strategy and a philosophy and so on and so forth? Solskjaer got the permanent job. Some of you will then argue and say the following season United came third and they got to the semis, I think, of the Europa League, semis of the FA Cup. So some of you will say, but he was actually quite successful in the next season. And then obviously the season after that, he got moved to and got sacked. Currently in the Premier League, Frank Lampard has just taken over as interim manager for Chelsea until the end of the season. For those who are Chelsea fans, if Lampard was to do brilliantly for the remainder of this season for Chelsea, should Chelsea then appoint Frank Lampard as full-time coach? Yes or no? Leicester have just appointed Dean Smith, former Norwich manager, former Aston Villa manager, as head coach. As interim head coach until the end of the season to try and save them from relegation. Should he save them from relegation? Should Dean Smith get the permanent job? Yes or no? Hopefully you're seeing the link here. At the end of 2022, Andre Coley was tasked with beginning, I should say, of 2023. Andre Coley was tasked with taking over the West Indies head coach job as an interim head coach. We've had Andre Coley on the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. You can listen to that podcast on any audio platform that you listen to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast on, or you can go back into our YouTube archives and find that on the playlist Caribbean Cricket Podcast episodes. And I think Andre Coley gave a very good, impassioned, knowledgeable conversation that we had with him with regards to him, his kind of growth in the world of cricket, his contribution to the domestic game, and so on and so forth. Now, when Coley became interim head coach, what did you all expect from him? Again, get in the comments below at us at Carib Cricket, Twitter and Instagram, Caribbean Cricket Podcast group on Facebook, if that's your lick as well. What did you want from him? Was there any situation in which you believed, and when I say you, I mean anyone who's listening to this, watching this, was there any situation in which you believed Andre Coley might deserve the permanent head coach job? What did he need to do in Zimbabwe and South Africa for you to believe he could get the full-time job? This is what he did. We went to Zimbabwe for a 2-match test series and we won that 1-0. The first test match effectively was rain affected and it was virtually impossible to force a victory. So he did his job in Zimbabwe. We went to South Africa for a test series straight after, a place where we've never won a test series in our lives, and we lost 2-0. I've done a video where I've done player ratings on the test series. I've done a video where I've reviewed that particular test series. Go back in the archives, listen and watch it. Do you think that we performed okay in that test series? You can't say we performed well because we got licked down, right? But how was the level of the lick bad enough for you to rule out Andre Coley as a red ball coach? Won in Zimbabwe, lost in South Africa. But then in the white ball section of the tour, we drew 1-1 remember the first game was washed out. We drew 1-1 in the ODIs, and in the T20s we won 2-1. So in the 5 white ball games he played in South Africa, we won 3 out of 5. Obviously, Samuel Badri was announced prior to the tour that he was going to be assistant coach for the T20 leg of the tour as well. So I should probably throw Samuel Badri's name in there as well as contributing to the coaching group, Kenny Benjamin in that group as well, so on and so forth. So I asked people this, based on Coley's record, okay, won in Zimbabwe Test Series, lost the Test Series in South Africa, drew the ODI Series in South Africa, won the T20 Series in South Africa. Do we make the same kind of decision that Manchester United made with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, that Chelsea made with that Chelsea have made or might make with Frank Lampard, that Leicester might make with Dean Smith? Do we give the full-time job to the interim head coach? And if we do give the full-time job to the interim head coach, in this case, Andre Coley, which one do we give him? Because I would venture to say that nearly every West Indian fan prior to the South African Zimbabwe tour would have said that it's far more likely that Andre Coley, if he gets the permanent job, gets the red ball job because of how invested he is in the kind of domestic system, the kind of development system back home. And if you go and look at the job advert in terms of what they've actually put on the job advert for the red ball and white ball head coach, there's certain things in there that I'm going to read the red ball one to you. There's certain points which I wonder if people know are in there. Let me read this one to you. Here we go. This is just one of the things I picked up in the job description. It says, this is in the player development section. The head coach in red ball must provide coaching and mental support to underpin Cricket West Indies high-performance programs. This includes the West Indies A team, Cricket West Indies Academy, Best versus Best, President's 11. The bullet point above that says the West Indies red ball head coach must engage with and encourage local coaches to build capacity to assist in developing young elite players to aspire and strive to play for the West Indies team. Listen, the job description, there's loads and loads of bullet points. I just picked out 2 random ones there as an example. The point being that whoever gets the red ball job is expected to do significant work in the domestic program, because we don't play that many test matches. In 2024, we're playing 11, but in 2025, we play 6, 2026, we play 6, 2027, we play 6. So it's not like we got tons and tons of test matches like in India, like in Australia, like in England. So whoever's getting the red ball job, their job isn't just to be a test coach. They're expected to play a key role in player development and developmental systems within the Caribbean. Should that therefore go to a homegrown coach? Now, if it should, has Andre Coley done enough in his stint as interim head coach to get that job? I'm not here to tell you yes or no. I'm here to just pose the question, and I'm here to see what people say in response. Get at me in the comments below, at us at Caribbean Cricket on Twitter and Instagram. Head to the Facebook group. Let me know what you think. And then we head to the white coach dilemma, or the white ball head coach dilemma. Got a cold out here, people, but I'm still battling through, you know? I think the majority of West Indies fans would have said prior to Andre Coley's appointment that the white ball head coach is likely to go to an overseas candidate, because they would have, and I think this is kind of like the preconceived ideas. They would have said it's got to go to an overseas candidate because there's far more progressive thinkers in white ball cricket. West Indies have been left behind with regards to T20s. They've been completely left behind with regards to ODI cricket. So we got to bring in new ideas, new thoughts, outside thinkers into our white ball setup. I think the large majority of West Indian fans would have said something along those lines. I'm not talking about myself. I might have said it as well, but I'm not talking about myself. I'm just saying what I think the majority would have said. Since that, though, Coley won 3 out of the 5 white ball games, whether ODIs or T20s, in South Africa. Does that suddenly put Coley in contention for the white ball job? Does that put Samuel Badri in contention as his assistant? I don't even know if Badri wants that, but does it put them in contention, or do we ignore it because they were interim? They were in an interim role, and we've seen that sometimes if you rush to give somebody a job who's been in an interim role, just because they've done well, you get finessed. I don't know. But I went and looked at what the white ball. I went and looked at something that was in the job description for the white ball and red ball head coach, because some of you may remember that when Ricky Skerritt was Cricket West Indies president, he spoke a lot about West Indian first policy. And his point was that if there was a West Indian who was just as qualified as any overseas international candidate, it should go to the West Indian first, right? Again, not asking you to agree with that. I'm just stating facts. Obviously, Dr. Kishore Shallow and Azim Basarath are the new president and vice president now of Cricket West Indies. I don't know if Shallow has gone on any media anywhere. I've not seen it. I've not read it. I've not watched it if he has, to say that West Indies first policy is still in existence. But what I do know is that in the job description, it said the following. One of the key skills for whoever becomes head coach is that they must be culturally sensitive and able to manage the broad diversity of players from across the region. To me, that's their way of suggesting the head coach might need to be a West Indian or might need to be somebody from the Caribbean. That's my take. I'm not saying that's what Cricket West Indies has said. I'm saying that's my interpretation. It is much harder and we've had so many examples of this in the last 25 years. I'm talking about a Bennett King. Who else? Boy, you could even argue Otis Gibson. I'm talking about a Bennett King. Based on this, these are things that I've heard from different people. We have had head coaches in the last 20 years who weren't West Indian or Caribbean, who I don't think fully appreciated the unique nature that is the the broad diversity that exists within the Caribbean. Look how many cricket fans don't even understand that the Caribbean or the West Indies team is made up of people from different islands. Me as a Jamaican is not the same as somebody who is from Trinidad. We are broadly the same in terms of where we are people from the Caribbean, but we have different cultural sensitivities. And this is before we get into the Indo-Caribbean dynamic and the Afro-Caribbean dynamic within some of the nations and islands as well, right? So there's different cultural and diverse sensitivities. As a result, if we go with an overseas head coach, Cricket West Indies have to be 100% certain that whoever they go for gets it and gets the cultural dynamics of being a West Indies head coach. Does that mean a West Indian definitely gets it? No. You only have to look at our media who love to call out this bias, that bias, insularity here, insularity there. That's going to happen no matter what. So there's a flip side argument to say, boy, it don't even help if you're a West Indian and you get the job, because the media is going to be the media. So maybe we should actually appoint someone who is completely removed from it, doesn't really get it, so doesn't get drawn into the bullshit that comes with all the kind of insularity and so on and so forth. People, I said a lot there. It's only 23 minutes, 24 minutes. I think that's enough. Get at me in the comments below, people. Who are you giving the job to? And the thing is, lots of you are going to start calling some random names now. You're going to start calling, I'd give it to Stephen Fleming. Let's be realistic, people, okay? When you get in the comments below on YouTube, or whether you at us on Twitter or Instagram, wherever you at us, or in the Facebook group, whatever it might be realistic. Don't call a next man if you down in your heart believe that man would never, under any circumstances, want to move to the Caribbean and take on this job. Let me not remind everyone that the West Indies job is the hardest job in cricket in terms of international full member nations. I do not believe there is a harder job than the West Indies due to the dynamics that comes with being a head coach of a West Indies side. For those of you who play Football Manager, think of it as you're trying to revitalize a fallen giant who has fallen on, not on hard times, on the worst times. But you don't have the resources to play with that the top tier teams do. This is a seriously hard job to take on. Many have tried, Many have failed. I think we've done previous videos before. We've spoken about it doesn't matter who the head coach is. The win percentage always falls between 30 to 37%. There's only marginal gains that you can realistically expect any head coach to make for a West Indies side. So I'm not asking you lot to tell me who is Superman, who is Spider-Man, who is Thor, who's going to be the missing link to suddenly make everything click for the West Indies. I'm not asking for that. I'm just saying, who do you realistically believe should be the red ball head coach and the white ball head coach? And then further to that, do you think it should be a West Indian in one of or both of those particular positions? I'll be Machel St. Patrick Hewitt, one half of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. I'm back. We're back. Get in the comments. Let me know. You can also remember support the Caribbean Cricket Podcast by heading to www.patreon. It's scrolling at the bottom. patreon.com/Carib Cricket for as little as £1, £1, €1, £1, whatever your currency is, to keep us on the road. And as ever, like, share, subscribe. I'll be Machel St. Patrick Hewitt, one half of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. Thank you and good night.
We rule the cricket world. Now the rule seems coming.
Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans.